Hello and welcome to all you digital makers out there. We're making it tweet this week on Digital Making at Home. If you haven't already, say hey in the chat and let us know where in the world you are. I'm Mr. C and I'm coming to you live from Cambridge in the UK. And back with us, as always, is my fellow API adventurer, Christina. Hey, Christina.
Hi, Mr. C. Hi, everyone. I'm joining from Nebraska in the USA. And thank you to everyone joining from all over the world for another great episode of Digital Making at Home. Great to see you, Mr. C.
Great to see you too.
We already have folks in the chat early today. I see CFP had the countdown, Gorilla. Hello, Alberta, Canada to John. And Amio, hi, great to see you. Thanks so much for getting involved with us. We're so happy to hear from you. Our special guest this week is Helen Lee. She's the head of community at Crowd Supply, and her YouTube channel is amazing. So many cool inventions, and her videos always want you to learn something from her experiences. She's made some sculptures, wearables, robot unicorns, and cute cuddly Kalulu tentacles. Then in the making of the show, Helen will show us how to connect a Raspberry Pi and a camera up to Twitter to use in all sorts of smart projects.
Yeah, I mean, being able to get the Pi to tweet is a really useful tool. You can use it as a public alert, a remote monitoring system, method of user or audience interaction, loads of stuff. For those of you who are with us for the first time this week, welcome. Digital Making at Home is all about helping people change the world by making their ideas real with technology. Every Wednesday, we make cool gadgets together, see amazing digital making projects from young people worldwide, and chat with incredible inventors and makers from all over the globe.
And every week, our show is made better by having all of you here with us making, inventing, and chatting about tech. We broadcast every episode live to YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. All of your comments and questions pop up in front of us live during the stream, and we love hearing from everyone during the show. Feel free to jump in, ask questions, chat with each other, or let us know your opinion about something in the show.
Definitely. We love hearing from the crowd. Whenever someone points out something interesting, supports another digital citizen in the chat, or has a really great question to ask us, we love shouting at your contributions. So keep all the comments and questions rolling in. It's nice to see Alex O, Eddie's Tech, and Stephen already in the chat today. Great to have you back making with us. Before we bring on Helen and see some of her cool gadgets, do us a quick favor and just click subscribe. Like, having you on the team really makes a huge difference to us being able to get the word out about all the cool stuff we're doing. So help us to keep making all the content we do by clicking the like button or heading to rpf.io/sub to get updates on all of our new content.
Yes, subscribe. Join this amazing global community. And I mean global. Look at folks joining us. We've got Canada, South Africa. Alex O, I know, is in Puerto Rico preparing for Pi Wars. Good luck, Alex. That's amazing
Awesome
to hear. So cool. Now, Mr. C, I have a question. You're pretty active on Twitter. Have you ever made a Twitter bot?
Yes, I have made a couple of Twitter bots, actually. I've helped young people make quite a few too. And you see the account that we're using today, it's got some old tweets in it from like a project I did quite a while ago. And we built an old people fall sensor. I mean, have you done any bots before? Or?
We've done one on our team. We did one for Pi Academy. A lot of times folks will put like Pi Academy, especially when they've gotten into the program. They're super excited about it in past summers. So we made what we called a polite Babbage bot. So if anyone ever tweeted out like a hashtag that said Pi Academy, it would respond and be like, actually, friend, it's Pi Academy. So It was a lot of fun, and folks really enjoyed it. Yes, folks, we're a community of learners, inventors, and creators coming together to change the world through digital making. If it's your first time joining us, say hi in the chat. We want to know. And welcome back. We love seeing returners, Eddie's Tech, Alex, Nadia, hey Nadia, from Iraq, Thomas, USA, South Carolina. Oh, seeing folks coming back, it always brings so much joy. Make sure to pop into the chat and say hello and subscribe and join this digital making adventure.
Absolutely. So should we bring Helen on now and have a chat with her?
Yes, let's do it. Helen, are you there?
Helen, are you there?
I am. Hello. Nice to meet you.
Hello. Hi, Helen. Thanks for being with us today. So great to have you.
Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. Now, Helen, you've been doing physical computing for a while now. What is it that you enjoy so much about marrying programming and the physical world?
Well, actually, I never really got interested in programming until I started making things in the physical space. You know, I'd been on W3 schools. I taught myself a little bit of PHP, a little bit of HTML and CSS, but it never really clicked until I came across the world of physical computing and the world of making. I just love making things tangible. There's something magical about pushing electrons around and getting them to do crazy things that you really want them to do. So it's just, I don't know, the tangibility of it, the excitement of it. I feel like some kind of inventor, and it's very exciting to do physical computing.
For sure. Absolutely. And I appreciate like the camera angle to get like a peek into your inventor station. It's so
this is my work workbench.
Love it, love it. Can you share
Yeah.
with some of us some of the things that you've been working on recently?
Well, to be perfectly honest with you, Christina, I've been a little bit less productive than normal recently. I've just been kind of affected by the pandemic, so my creativity levels have been like. However, I have made some cool things recently. I've made a little robotic candy dispenser, and I've got loads of things on my bench to share with you. Projects that I've made. Most of the things that I tend to make are either little robotics things, like cute little robotics things.
I love your symbol for cute robotics.
Yeah, it is. It's like cute robotics. Or I really like making objects that make noise, and that could be instruments. That can be like just any kind of like sound object, right? Some people love LEDs. I mean, you had the amazing Deborah Geekmom Projects on your live stream the other day, and she's like the queen of LEDs. She makes these amazing things. But for me, I mostly make noisy things, right?
I loved your musical sculpture, the one where you can touch all the different parts and it makes all those bits. Do you have anything like with you there in the room that you can show us?
Let me show you what have I got here. What should I start with? Okay, let's start here. This is one people like. So this is this is my. There we are. You got it?
I have to get you up.
There we go.
Well, let me start with the desk instead of that one. All right. Well, let's start off here then. So this is a reasonably simple make that I made for Hackaday, for a tutorial for Hackaday a couple of months ago. But the what it is this is no microcontroller at all. This is an old-fashioned microphone. So essentially, I hold it up in front of my face, and it's got this, and I sing into it. So what it is, let me just show it. Oh yeah, so you sing into it like this. But let me just show you what it's made of. So it's an embroidery hoop through which I've suspended some elastic that's just tied onto some crocodile clips, and then in the center I've got a plastic hoop with a large piezo. Now piezo is a type of it's an input and an output. Actually, it's kind of a cool object, cool device here, and basically what it does is it can record vibrations, or it can sense for vibrations, or it can make vibrations. So when it's sensing vibrations, which is what it's doing here, it's basically picking up vibrations you can see it does vibrate quite a lot when I tap it. So it would be able that when I speak, these vibrations are coming out of my mouth, the sound, right? They're being picked up by this piezo, and then they're transmitted down a wire into this plug. So this is a jack, just goes into a guitar amp. So I plug this into my guitar amp, and I'm able to use a microphone and a piezo as a really cool old-timey mic. It sounds fantastic as well. So that's a really fun build. Yeah. And if you're interested in building one of those, Hackaday have got that up on their site, the full instructions. It's a very cheap make. It's, it's maybe like, if you've got an embroidery hoop already, the electronic components in it are probably like $2 or $3 maximum. So that's kind of a fun one. So that's my microphone that I made, microcontroller free. I also have, I also do a lot of sewing. So here's a bunch of different, so what I call electronic embroidery. So there's different types of thread that you can use that conduct electricity. So instead of using a wire to make your circuit, you can sew a path. And I really like that because it's quite creative, and that you can see. So this is an analog synthesizer I made that is all fully embroidered. So you play it by touching these things. It sounds pretty terrible. Oh, wow. Yeah. So it's all hand sewn, and you can, I don't know if you can see.
Yes.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So this is all hand sewn, and there's a chip on it, which is an LM386 chip, and then I've got 2 capacitors, and that's the whole circuit apart from the touching, and that's embroidered with copper thread. I also sometimes use silver thread. So this is a cute little board called the Serpente, which runs CircuitPython, and it's embroidered to all these neopixels, right? So you can see I've done the traces. It's quite fun. I like sewing things. Let me show you, if you can bring the camera to my face, because this is a big one to show. I'm going to show you this one. So this is another fun. Fun make. Let me just move my camera up a little so you can see it. So basically, this is a giant plushy toy. It's a tentacle that I wrap around my body, and it's kind of comforting. So basically, I can hold it and squish it. But on the inside, there's a microcontroller called Bear Conductive, which has some sounds on it. So basically, if you can see, well, let me put it on the down camera. You can see the stitching here. Yeah. So down the center of the tentacle, I have embroidered some of that silver conductive thread that I was talking about. So essentially, that turns this into a giant capacitive touch sensor, right? So what I've done is basically when you stroke it, it purrs to me, because I wanted something comforting, and like, especially now, right, during the pandemic, it's really, you just want to be comforted and cuddle something. So basically it's a big anxiety reduction pillow that sends the most comforting sound I can think of into my ears, which is the bassy sound of a cat purring. But it's pretty simple. And this one I've written up how to do this as well. That was published in Hackspace magazine, which is a Raspberry Pi magazine, in fact.
Yes,
you can
check it out.
Yeah. So this was done in that. In fact, so was this. I published this in Raspberry Pi as well. So this one and this one, and my embroidered analog synth are going in. They'll all be published in Hackspace magazine. I think the embroidery one isn't out yet, but the other ones are.
So everybody can get involved with like doing the things that you've done. I mean, educating others is like that means like educating others is obviously important though, right? Like teaching other people how to do it. Like me, I love doing it. It's like what gives me a huge buzz. Like, why do you think it's important to teach kids about tech and being able to make their own things?
Well, from a purely selfish point of view, I love it. I literally just adore teaching other people the cool, strange things that I do. So that's the entirely selfish motivation I have for teaching. But also, I just think it's really, like we are surrounded by technology these days. I think it's so important that we see ourselves as somebody who can influence that technology, not that it's just in this mysterious black box that's magic, right? Like the ability to actually understand some of the technologies that that we use in our lives is so important. I think it's, by teaching children these things, we can encourage them to think like creators, not consumers. They should feel empowered to take control of the technology that they're using in their day-to-day lives. It doesn't mean that everybody has to be an engineer or a software engineer for their job. It's just, it's nice to demystify the things that we see so much and the things that we use.
100%. And once upon a time, there was like people didn't know how to read and write, right? Being illiterate was commonplace, and it was seen as, it's okay. There are people who can handle those tasks for me. And we wouldn't think of that today with young people saying, it's okay, you don't need to read and write, you can pay somebody else. And it's the same with tech now. It's so many things in our lives are dependent upon it. And you have to be able to understand at least a little bit of how it works, I think, to have that sense of agency in your own life. How did you get started? How did you get into doing that sort of thing?
So I actually didn't go to university to study this. I didn't study this in school. I actually came up entirely in maker spaces and through other makers who've helped me. So I'm a writer, or I was a writer. It's not my day job anymore. And I used to write curriculum materials, and I used to write books with a group of education books with a group of my friends. And we got brought in to do some writing on a project that was based on a piece of Intel technology. And it was set in a fab lab, like a London fab lab. This was back when I lived in London. And oh my goodness, it was the first time I'd ever been into a makerspace. And I felt like, wow, I didn't know I was missing this in my life. But it truly, the machines everywhere, the peer-to-peer learning, it wasn't like formal learning. I've always found that quite stifling. It was more like, how do I do this thing? And then someone would be there to teach you, right? So I learned how to solder in a hackerspace. I learned how to code on YouTube and on the internet. I learned how to use an oscilloscope on my friend's kitchen table. My friend Phoenix, she taught me how to use an oscilloscope. So I don't have any formal training in electronics or electronic engineering. I've just kind of learned on the job, and I've learned by making things, really. And as I've progressed over the last, I guess, 5 years since I started doing this, my depth of technology has gotten deeper and deeper, but it's very much been on project-based, the term like project-based learning, right? And that's very much like, that's how I teach, but that's also how I learned, right? I practice what I preach. So everything I've learned, I've generally, I just don't learn in in that kind of traditional way, like sat down in front of a computer, like, exactly, right? If I don't need it, I'm like, why would I bother? So I like to learn skills and learn about,
all right. So pie in the sky, right? If I said to you, I will pay your salary, you have an unlimited budget, you can make whatever you want, go nuts, here's a shed full of stuff. What stuff would you ask for, and what would you be making?
I would love to make. Can I choose two things?
Of course, yeah, go nuts.
Okay, good. Okay, so I would have two jobs, right? So I love teaching. I really desperately miss teaching, actually. So I would love, if I had unlimited money, I would run an alternative education institute where we learned all about whatever we wanted, all about alternative technology and how to put it into different art forms as well. So I have taught technology a lot to other artists, a number of different institutions, and I find it so satisfying to teach people to use technologies like these hardware, the software that we're using, different sensors, to integrate into their existing work, right? So it's not, the technology itself is not the point, right? The technology is merely a tool to achieve whatever. It's a
force multiplier.
Right? Yeah, so I love teaching people who already have a level of expertise in something, whether that's I don't know, like making music or, making, someone who already has an established practice, teaching them how to integrate tools into technology is a massive passion. Yeah, so I would love to run a school, a technology school for artists, artists and scientists. That would be super fun. But if I was going to just make things myself, I would love to make giant, and I'm talking like 3-4 story high interactive sculptures that sing to you when you touch them. Amazing. I'm very inspired by there's a French artist called Louise Bourgeois, and I came across her work first at the Tate Modern, and she's like one of those, she's dead now, but she was one of those old lady artists who she's living in New York. She was this French lady, and she didn't give any, she was she didn't give a rat's whatever anybody thought of her. She was just really independent. She was super fun, and super grumpy. And she made these incredible sculptures out of loads and loads of different types of materials, from fabric to steel to glass, all of these incredible things. And I'm very inspired by her body of work. And she made these giant spider sculptures, and I saw one called Maman, and I was like, wow, that's so amazing. And in the same visit, I saw this super cool sculpture, which is a functional sculpture, and that's also in the Tate Modern. And it's a giant ISS, International Space Station, made of wire and suspended. But it's not just a sculpture; it's also a functional antenna for a ham radio that picks up a signal from the ISS as it goes overhead. And I was like, wow.
Yeah, that's wild.
And if I had unlimited budget and a giant workspace, that's what I'd make. So I would teach, and I would make improbably large sculptures that do things.
I love that. That's amazing.
It makes me think of a couple weeks ago, we had my brother on, and he talked about some of the work that he's done with Burning Man Festival in Nevada. And one of them was making a giant sculpture that responded to touch. And so there was a slide, and people could touch it. It responded to sound and touch, and so it makes me think a little bit. I can connect you both if you want to connect.
I would love that. Yeah. Well, actually, that's been one. So I've recently moved to the west coast of the USA. So I was in Berlin before that, and London before that. But in both London and Berlin, I didn't really have that much space to play with. Mm-hmm. So it's really exciting to get to come to the west coast of the US. Not only is there's a big technology culture here and lots of hardware hackers in the city that I live in, which is super fun for me. I get to learn from some really awesome people. But also there's just a lot of space here. And there are things like Burning Man, where you can go and make art, like giant scale art. So that's very much, you know, what I'm interested in doing.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And you made a tweeting bird bot was one of the other projects that you
I did, yes.
Yeah.
So
I had a crack at it today as well.
Oh, you did? That's fun.
I did, yeah.
So one of the things I do is I write hardware column. I have got a hardware column that I write for Make Magazine, and the bird bot that you're talking about is I did an article on conservation technology. So I'm really interested in like openness in general in society, right? Like, because I believe that sharing knowledge is sharing power, and it's like the next stage in human evolution for us, right? Is opening everything up and sharing our knowledge. So I wrote an article about open science, which is scientists who want to open up their data, their methodology, the technology they use, and their papers afterwards. And as part of that, I talked about citizen science, and also like just getting involved in your own back garden, right? You can make these scientific instruments now. It's actually very exciting, you know. And the history of science, you know, like if you go back quite far, it actually used to be super closed, right? Like people didn't want to share their results with each other. But now, you know, things are changing, right? We have access to these technologies. Like 10 years ago, there's no way somebody, you know, would be able to do the kind of things that I would be able to do, right? So we're all standing on the shoulders of giants. I'm standing on the shoulders of all the people who, like, I'm making things, but I'm relying on the awesome people who write the libraries and maintain the code base, and, you know, made the AVR programmer free, you know, back in before Arduino, you know, like, so we're all standing on the shoulders of giants, and that's all very exciting. So that's the context behind that bird box.
Speaking of which, that's it. That's how I got the bird box to go too. Like,
we've been standing on your shoulders.
Right?
Well, exactly. I share my code, you share your code, everybody shares their code, and we don't, you know, like, we can just get on with the doing, right? Like, I don't code because I love coding. I code because I want to do something, right?
Oh, so, I love that. Yeah. I think yes, yes to that. Well, let's code to make this all right. To make So
Mr. C, you're gonna be coding along with my little code, right?
I have got your code here. Yes, so I have the script up already. So this
there's no errors.
No, it's all good, right? So I VNC'd into my Raspberry Pi, which is currently sort of pointed out my window at my vegetable patch, and because I've been having these cats coming through the gaps in my fence. I have gaps in my fence to let the sun through so that my beans will grow properly, and then cats keep coming through into my back garden and leaving presents for me, which I'm not happy about. So I'm going to set up, instead of a bird box, I'm going to use it to find out which of the neighborhood cats is coming into my back garden. And then sort of name and shame that cat around the neighborhood or something. I'm not sure what I'll do once I work it out.
Make a little wanted posters and print them out.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, that's it.
You could be like most wanted. You could get a little thermal printer, print it out from the Raspberry Pi, and shame the cat around the internet, right?
Seen at this place at this time. I got video footage of you being in my vegetable patch.
Yeah. You can get super cute little thermal printers that connect to Raspberry Pis as well.
You can, yeah. So a friend of mine has made a couple of projects with them. Alex, who's been on the show before. Yeah, she's made a couple of
I've not played with one, actually. Oh, Alex Glow?
Alex Bate. Or Alex Jurassic.
Yeah.
But yeah, so your code is amazing, by the way. Like, I looked at it and it's so simple. Like, I know what you're saying. You're saying, oh, it's really easy and it's just for kids, but that's actually really hard to do well. Like, to make something erudite and concise is very
honestly hard. It's what I spend the vast majority when I'm coding, and I know I'm going to publish my code. I spend the vast majority not getting it work, but deeply simplifying it. It's
100%,
but much more. That's much more difficult. Yeah,
that's the hardest part. But so we've got, as we explained to everybody when we do Python scripts, that there's like 3 sections. There's the importing part, there's the setting up part, and then at the bottom there's the execution part, which is where your script actually runs. And so you can see here for the people at home, we've got all these imports, and there's like quite a few in here. So we're bringing in the camera, which we've used before, and we're importing the array, which we come down to using a little bit for detecting the motion. I might ask you some questions about that in a minute, Helen, like why you chose that. And we're importing numpy as MP, so we can do things like numbers. And sub-process allows us to access other things on the Raspberry Pi, doesn't it? We access other packages through that, as far as I'm aware. And then Twython is a special thing that we use inside Python to use Twitter. And then we have this keys. And keys was the one that stumped me. I'm like, that's not one I've ever heard of. And I went back to your GitHub and realized, That's because it's another Python file into
Yeah.
which I put all of my Twitter keys,
Yes.
which is
Yeah.
really cool, right?
It's
I
a good
love
one.
that.
And I can't take credit for that. That's a practice that Adafruit have drilled into me. So Adafruit always have a secrets.py file for all of their IoT things, and it's just really good practice, especially if you're the kind of person who likes to share their code with their friends. So if you're sharing your code with your friends and it's got all your Wi-Fi details in it, or your IO, your Adafruit IO or whatever, or your Twitter login, then you could get into some trouble, especially if it's published somewhere like social media or GitHub. So it's really good practice to keep all of your private data in a separate file so you don't share it accidentally when you go on and share your code.
That's right. People can see here that I've actually obscured chunks of mine. I've obfuscated chunks of my keys here with like big chunks of asterisks so that you can't copy my keys and access my code.
I can't see the code.
Purposes.
I
can zoom in a bit. Hang on a sec. I'll make it bigger.
No, I can't see it at all on my screen. But it's
okay.
Can you see it, Christina?
I can see it. Yes.
Oh well, it doesn't matter if everybody else can see it. I don't mind. I mean, I wrote the code, so I know what it says.
Cool, but you can see here, everybody, we import, it says consumer key secret access token and access token secret, which are things that you get from your Twitter account. So when you build a dev account, and anybody can have one, you just have to
see, actually, I can't see it anymore.
No, I've pulled the code down. This is like the Twitter account.
The Twitter. Got it.
Yeah. And so anyone can have a dev account as long as you have to go through a bit of a process. You apply and they bounce back to you and say, what do you want to use it for? And then you have to reply to an email with an answer so it sort of proves that you're a human that's opening a dev account so that you're not opening some crazy spam bot on Twitter that's going to destroy the universe or something. Right. So you can do that. You get your dev account and then that's where you get those keys. You have to generate them for your new app. And so I went and generated them and popped them into this, which again, I love the fact that there's a whole other file. I just paste all my keys in and save it, and then the script will still work without me having to hunt for them. So cool. And then the next part, you define your class detect motion. Why? That's one of my top questions is why did you choose to use the camera array instead of something like a motion detector or a distance sensor?
Well, so there's a number of different ways to detect motion, right? So something that people use often is a PIR sensor, which has two little sensors inside it, and it tracks the differential, right? So it can track your heat. It can tell if you're there. A PIR sensor is super common. You'll have used them anytime you've had to wave your hands around in an empty classroom to turn the automatic lights back on. You've been waving at a PIR sensor. They're great little sensors, and the distance sensor, the ultrasonic sensor, they're like kind of, they work in a way like a dolphin, right? It sends out something, sends out a signal, and then it can hear it when it comes back. So it's echolocation kind of. So there's the PIR sensor, which is heat. There's the echolocation kind of distance sensor, and then but both of those they're great for sensing movement. But because I wanted to put my Raspberry Pi inside my house, it had to look out through a window. Okay, so both the PIR sensor, which is the heat sensor, and the echo ultrasonic distance sensor won't work through glass. Okay, so those signals would be blocked. So I had to find a different way to do it. And I was struggling with this a little bit. I was like, should I just build a waterproof casing and put it outside? And then I found this really useful thing in Pi Camera, this really functionality in Pi Camera, which basically what it does, it detects motion based on frames, right? So you've got, it basically takes an image, and then it kind of stores that image, and then it will compare that same image to an image taken like, a certain amount of time later. And if you have a look at line 13 to 24 in my code, this bit here, so basically that's what that detect motion is for, and that analysis, right? So what it is doing is it's setting it up, and then it compares, and then if you see this, if A is more than 80, and that A is like if more than 80 pixels, I think it is, have changed, then it defines it as, because they might change a little bit down due to cloud cover or whatever. So basically you can tweak you can tweak that that number on line 22 to be able to increase or decrease the sensitivity of the sensor. So essentially, it's basically just comparing the data between two images, and then it triggers based on difference between those two images.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
And then the next part.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. And then all it's doing is you're calling those things, the consumer key, the consumer secret, access token. If you go back up to the top, it says that those things are being imported from the keys file. And remember, that's where we're keeping all of our secrets. And that's where I've got, here we are, the consumer key, there we are. So it's calling that. So it's like, okay, we know what to do when we've got to connect to Twitter. And then the last little chunk of code here is just saying, so there's a little bit of setup, but then basically it's creating, what have I done here? Let me just remember what my code says. What did I do?
Well, we have
that's quite tidy. I'm quite impressed by that.
It's really nice. It's very nicely formatted.
Yeah. Well, that's I'm impressed with that code. Good job, me.
Just going to share too that Thomas on YouTube just had an aha moment. So something you just shared was really helpful, Helen.
Good. So basically, what I'm doing. So the way that the Pi camera outputs video is a format called H.264, right? Which is fine, but it's not readable by Twitter, right? So Twitter needs an MP4 to be able to do that. So basically what I've done is I've called, so in lines 42, wait a second, what have I done here?
42 and 43 is where you pull.
42 and 43. So basically I'm basically using my terminal, that's the little black box where you type in your code. So I'm using my terminal to convert the H.264. So basically, I'm calling this function an MP4 box, and basically what I'm doing is converting that on line 43. I'm converting the H.264 into an MP4, which is what Twitter can read. Okay.
Cool.
Yeah. So if you send it the wrong format, so basically, I needed to make sure that it converted, and this was the most elegant way that I found of doing that. And then I send that MP4 Twitter, that MP4 video to Twitter. Something that's worth looking at here is this wait recording. So the lines 38, 39, and 40 in the code. So there's a few different things you can call this. There's start recording. And so basically what it's doing is it's recording a 15-second buffer of video, right? So it's continuing to record this buffer of video. Then it pauses after that, and it saves that video to the, is it a bird video.h264 in that format, right? It saves 15 seconds of video, and it will continuously keep doing that. It will continuously just keep running 15 seconds of video, and it will only trigger, like it will only do something with that video if there has been motion detected. Okay, so if there's been motion detected, it will send that 15-second snippet to Twitter for that. But yeah, I played with a few different ways of doing that, and I find that was the most elegant way of doing it, was this wait recording. So like start recording, wait recording, stop recording. So you've got that 15-second, and if it's not triggered, if there's no motion output, all it will do is go back up to the top of that loop, while true loop, okay, and it will go back down again, and it will record another 15 seconds on the same thing. So it's over and over and over again. It's writing 15 seconds of video to that same file. So I'm not creating like endless, because video takes up a lot of space, right? So I'm only ever have 15 seconds of video recorded on my device at any one time. So it's not going to like crash my computer or anything. So I find that like quite a nice way of doing it. Yeah.
Awesome. Very cool. So what I'll do, I'll run the program. Less than 50 lines of code.
Oh, I would say, if you are doing this, something I didn't do, you should put in, you should experiment with adding in a delay afterwards, right? So if there's like something that happened to me after I did this was like we had lots and lots and lots of birds, and lots of birds triggered them like every 15 seconds. So you might want to like add in a delay after you've sent, you know, so you don't spam everybody accidentally like I did accidentally spam everybody with pictures of birds on my balcony because I forgot to set a time limit, and then I walked away for 2 hours, and unfortunately like all my followers were like, why are there constant pictures of birds on my feed for the last 2 hours? Every 15 seconds I've got like a bird video. I was like, oh, whoops. I forgot about that. Probably shouldn't have walked away from my machine while it was running, but you know.
That's funny, but you always have to appreciate that. I feel like I follow enough makers on Twitter that I'm like, oh, they're testing something. Something's being tested right now.
I did lose like 50 followers or something. I was like, oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I don't want non-bird lovers following me anyway.
Well, exactly.
Eddie's Tech makes a good point too, though. Eddie's Tech makes a great point about being rate limited by Twitter. If you get caught spamming Twitter as a bot, they'll shut your account down too.
Yeah, so you want to add that delay.
Yeah. So what did I did something for this most recent one. Why don't you go on ahead and I'll find out the piece of code that I ended up using for.
All right, so
motion.
Detected motion.
Woo! Oh, you've got it running. Nice.
Yeah. Let's see what's it going to do next. It should now convert the file. There it goes.
Ooh. Exciting.
Yeah.
And then post to Twitter.
Moment of truth, always. You refresh. There we go.
Yay! That's so exciting.
That's awesome. Yeah, it works. That's really cool.
That's super cool. Oh my gosh, what was the
So now I just need to fine tune the whole like how many pixels it detects. Yeah, detect the motion sensing.
Right.
But that's it. That's awesome.
Do you want me to show you my code that it's not the same? It's like a little snippet of code that would work in to rate limit your tweets that I did for a different project, but I can show you that if you like. I could press.
Yes, please. Yeah, if you share.
Let me see if I can share my screen. My privacy setting. My Firefox sometimes is like, no, you can't share your screen.
If not, you could always share with us later, and we can add it because we always do a blog post right after the streams, and we can add that in there.
No, I think it should be fine. Here we are.
Great. Yes.
There we go. All right, let me zoom in. That's a bit.
Yes, please zoom in.
Yeah. Oh, too much. I went too far. So this is for a different piece of code that I've written for something else. Let's move this down. Where is it? Here it is. So it's just these 4 little lines here. Yeah. So basically, hang on. There's this one too. So hang on. So at the top, I've got. This is for an Adafruit board, so but it would work with any kind of Python thing. So I'm using date time and also something called time delta. So time delta is something that's really, these are the libraries that I've imported. So time delta is actually really useful for comparing things. All right, so also then what I've done is I have set up, so this is using the date time library that I just showed you. I've set up a variable called timestamp. That I'm putting the value of date time into, right? I'm just put that there for now. And then that's just, I put that down there so you can see, but that's, and then in the while true loop is these 4 lines of code that is basically what I'm doing is, so the duration is equal to the current time, right? Minus the timestamp. So this timestamp, when before the for loop started, I've created a timestamp, a value called timestamp, which holds datetime.now, and that's when it started. So then it will go through this loop under the while true, and then basically what you're doing is you're creating a duration, which is the datetime.now. So that's like every time it goes through that loop, it's like, what's the time now? And it will check that against that timestamp that we created when we first started running the code. And then if the duration is more than 30 seconds, then it does something, right? It basically, it resets the timestamp, and then what this does here, so that calls a function which is sending information to Adafruit.io. But yeah, that's the way that I solved that issue, and I think that's it's like quite a small. That's the simplest way that I found to solve that. So
definitely.
Yeah,
Gosh, thank you so much, Helen. This has been super helpful and really amazing.
Cool.
And there was one user who I just think described it so well. Linker 3000 UK was just like, Helen, like your energy is contagious. You should bottle it up and sell it. Definitely agree. It's been so much fun having you. It's been really helpful just to see this project, be able to share it with folks. Thank you so much for showing this project, and hopefully we'll have you on again soon.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Thank you so much, Helen. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, I think Mr. C, are you frozen, Mr. C? Ay. Okay, folks. Well, what an awesome project to get started with on Twitter. If you're just getting started on your digital making journey, the Raspberry Pi Foundation is here to help you out. Check out our huge library of free maker content at projects.raspberrypi.org to find lots more awesome projects and tutorials. Want to learn how to use the Twitter API like we did? Do some machine learning, code some HTML, take pics with a Pi camera? Check out projects at projects.raspberrypi.org. There are tons of great tutorials there, and they're translated into a bunch of different languages. It was so great to see so many of you all getting involved this week in the chat. Shout outs to, I saw Nadia, Alex, Linker 3000, Ricardo in Brazil, Leonard. I saw we had friends from India joining us. We're so happy to have had you all join us today. Thank you to everyone. And thank you again to Helen for coming on to showing us your amazing and inspiring projects. That's all we have time for this week, but we want to see what you're making. Send us an email at dmah@raspberrypi.org to get in touch with us, and maybe we'll feature your project on the show. Or if you're the type of maker who tweets, you can tweet a picture of your project to us at raspberry_pi. Now, before we leave you, once again, make sure to subscribe so you're the first to be in the know to get updates on all of our great content on our channel as it comes out. We're all about supporting young makers and educators around the world with fresh new stuff every week, so don't miss out. Subscribe. Thank you all for being here for the Raspberry Pi Foundation's Digital Making at Home live stream today. We'll be back on the 23rd of June for more digital making. Until then, stay safe and healthy, and we'll see you next time. Bye.